Welcome to Compassionate Conversations, where we push the boundaries of comfort to empower you to become all that you dream of being. Hi everyone, I'm Esther Kane, Canadian psychotherapist and author. For over 25 years, I have helped thousands of highly sensitive people take back their power by owning their sensitivity and seeing it as a superpower rather than a mental health issue. To my great delight, I get to bear witness to these incredible transformations every day. For more information on the highly sensitive personality, please visit this page on my website to learn more, as well as how to assess whether you or a loved one is an HSP. If you are a highly sensitive person, you have probably struggled for most of your life believing that you were deeply flawed and didn't fit in. This can lead to internalized shame and self-blame about not being like most of the people around you. You are not alone. At least 20% of other humans across the globe have experienced that too, including me. The video you are about to watch is part of a series of interviews featuring some of my favorite highly sensitive people, or HSPs. We will take a deep dive into what it's like to be an HSP in a non-HSP world, as well as sharing tricks and tools that we've learned to accept our sensitivity and flourish in all areas of our lives. We hope you find these as helpful and life-changing as we do. The goal of this series is to emancipate, uplift, and empower highly sensitive people the world over. Join me and some other HSPs in this unique series in order to see that there are others just like you who experience the world in similar ways and have learned to navigate it powerfully and peacefully. I'm so excited about today's episode where I will be interviewing Jenn Granneman, the founder of the world's largest online community for introverts, introvertdear.com, and the co-founder of highlysensitiverefuge.com. An educator and a journalist, she is the co-author of Sensitive, this new wonderful book that I love, and the author of The Secret Lives of Introverts, which I also love. Yay. Jenn has been featured in Huffington Post, The Washington Post, the BBC, Oprah Daily, BuzzFeed, Glamour, and more, as well as numerous podcasts. Since embracing her own introversion and sensitivity, she reads too many self-help books and lives a pleasantly boring life in St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's so wonderful. So people love stories, and I'm dying to know your story. So let's start with your personal experience of being a highly sensitive person. So as a child, a teen, and an adult, and what it was like for you growing up as a highly sensitive person.
Sure. So for most of my life, I felt like something was wrong with me because of my sensitivity. I remember coming home from school as a child and just needing to go into my bedroom, turn on the lights, close the door, and do something calming like reading or journaling or something like that, because just the school day could be too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was always in tune with all the people around me, absorbing their emotions, thinking about them, thinking about what they were maybe thinking. And then there was, of course, all the noise and lights and activity of a classroom. And so what seemed like just a normal or common day at school could be tiring and exhausting for me, and I needed to retreat. And I noticed that other people didn't need to do that, at least not to the same degree that I did. So I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't handle the demands of normal life. I can also remember being a little older and watching a play, a musical, because I like musicals, and standing up and I'm just bawling, right? Because of the music and the themes of the play. And
You were
I'm
touched.
yeah, exactly. I was touched. And, my mind was just like thinking very deeply about the subject matter of the play. And I turned and I looked to the people who are with me, and they're just like, well, okay, where do you want to go for dinner? They're just like ready to hop off and move on.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of experiences like that throughout my life. And I just
Yeah.
always wondered why I didn't react to things the same way that other people reacted. So I felt very broken and flawed because of it until I learned about high sensitivity.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can relate so much to that. And it's just so beautiful. I'm just finding this, I'm healing so much as I do this work as well, because
I am
your
too. That's why I do
story,
it.
ah, your
It's really
story
for
is my
myself.
story. Yeah. Isn't it? It's sort of a selfish thing in a sense, because we need so much healing because we're so misunderstood, but then we're helping so many other people. It's a win-win. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm sure people watching and listening can totally relate to that. Um, I'm curious, when did you find out about high sensitivity? Do you remember how old you were?
Yeah, it was in my late 20s. I came across Dr. Elaine Aron's research.
Yeah,
I found her book.
you
Yeah,
bowed to
right.
her.
Exactly. Yes, I have so much gratitude for her.
Yeah,
And yeah, I remember taking her self-test and I checked literally every single box. So I was like, oh, I'm
yeah,
high sensitive, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's no doubt about that.
yeah.
So, and I was also learning about introversion at the same time. So
Yes,
I founded my blog, Introvert Dear, and I
yes,
started writing about introverts and highly sensitive people.
yeah,
And because when, I found this thing that really spoke to me, and I thought, I can't be the only one experiencing this. And it helped me. So
yeah,
I want to reach out to other people because it might help
yeah.
them too.
Well, and thank you on behalf of all of us introverts and HSP for doing that, Jen. You've done such a beautiful job, and it's been so instrumental in my growth and healing as well as so many people I work with and the world around, I'm sure. Um, so I guess that made you do, to focus. So you've kind of focused your whole career, or have you focused your whole career on writing about introversion and high sensitivity? Because
Yeah,
you're a
pretty much.
journalist by trade, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did some other things too. I worked in marketing for a while. I
Mm.
was a local newspaper editor for a while. I was
How
a
did
teacher
those
for a
go?
while.
A teacher.
Yeah, I
Wow.
taught fourth grade for a while. So it
Yeah.
isn't the only thing I've done, but it's definitely my biggest focus.
Right. And is it the best fit you find?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved teaching. I loved my students. I loved that connection that I had with them, but it was a pretty overwhelming gig for a sensitive person.
Yeah. Yeah. Too much stimuli, I would think. The
Yes.
classroom and all those children, and yeah, vying for your attention and having, oh yeah. Yeah. So something that I'm really dying to ask you, because you're very much in the public eye, which is something most of us introverts and HSPs avoid like the plague. What led you to put yourself out there in such a public way? Were there any challenges in doing this?
I didn't intend to put myself out there in a public
It didn't start this
way.
way.
Yeah, it didn't start this way. I actually started Introvert Dear. I wrote it anonymously for the first 2 years because
Okay.
I had no
Wow.
desire to be in the spotlight.
Yes.
And it's definitely not the most comfortable thing for me to do interviews or to just, even post a photo of myself or something like
Yeah.
that, post a photo on Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's something I've grown into.
Mhm.
I can remember giving my first podcast interview and the host had to stop and say, "Okay, you need to say more than that." Because my answers were so short.
What was happening inside, Jen? What, internally as you were being interviewed?
I was nervous. I'm an introvert, but I can also be pretty shy.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I just didn't have that comfort level with putting myself
Yeah.
out there. I think I just
Yeah.
wanted to get out of the spotlight as quickly as possible.
Oh, I know. I joke about my wedding day because I'm still married to the man I married, yeah, many years ago. But it was the worst day and the best day of my life. Best day
I hear that a
because,
lot.
yeah, best day because I married the right person. Worst day because I was in the spotlight and it was horrendously uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
I would never do it again. I would elope.
Well, there you
Yes.
go. That'll keep your marriage together, just knowing you couldn't go through
Yeah,
with
yeah. I
another
don't want to
wedding.
do. Yes, yes. So let's talk about, so you've written two books, two excellent books. So your first book, The Secret Lives of Introverts, Inside Our Hidden World. I wrote a review on that, and I'll have that in the show notes. It was focused on introversion, incredibly helpful. And your latest book, Sensitive, is about highly sensitive people. So can you describe the process that led you to writing a book, first on introversion and now a book on sensitivity?
Yeah, well, I wanted to write about both topics because both of them speak to me. There's a lot of overlap in the characteristics between
Mm.
introverts and sensitive people, although you can also be a sensitive person and be an extrovert.
Yeah,
But
30%, I believe.
exactly, yes. So I wanted to write about both of them because they both explained parts of me that had challenged me or things that I had struggled with. So I think I tackled introversion first just because I don't know, I because I was in my 20s then and I was, I had a much more lively social life then.
Right, right.
And so I think I felt those social pressures more at that
Yeah,
point. And then, as I've gotten older, I just turned 40 a few months ago. I
really.
think it's becoming
An
more.
exciting time, 40.
Is it? It is actually. It is.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that sensitivity is a big piece of understanding the puzzle of
yeah,
who I am. It's a piece of that as well, and I think it's a big piece for other people too.
yeah. Like you, I am both an introvert and highly sensitive, and I'm married to an introverted, highly sensitive person. He's even more introverted than I am. Um, and yeah, it's packs a punch.
Yes.
The two together
Yes.
are, you've got the temperament of introversion where you need to, hide away for a lot and recharge your batteries, and you don't like big groups and all that stuff. But then you've got all of the sensory stuff on top of
Mhm.
it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, to contend with. I find it challenging. Okay, so insensitive, you're right. If you're sensitive, I thought this was profound. If you're sensitive, everything affects you more, but you do more with it. In fact, a better word for sensitive might be responsive. So, can you please extrapolate on this concept for those listening and watching?
Yeah. So I feel like sensitivity has suffered from a bit of a PR problem over the years.
Terrible PR problem.
Right. Right.
You're too sensitive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and sensitive can mean different things in common usage. I talk about some of those different definitions in the first chapter of our book. But a sensitive subject can be one that embarrasses the listener,
Yeah.
or a sensitive subject is one you avoid and you don't want to talk about because it'll be painful. So I think because of those other meanings of the word sensitive and sensitivity, highly sensitive people often get this bad reputation for being,
Mhm, mhm.
maybe too fragile or weak.
Yeah.
But that's not really what we mean when we talk about sensitivity as a personality trait. We're talking about
Yeah.
someone whose mind and body simply responds more to the world around them.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you respond more to heartbreak, pain, and loss, but you respond more to joy and
Yes.
love and ideas and
Yes.
positive emotions,
The good
right?
is really good.
Yeah, yeah. The bad can be bad and the good can
Yeah.
be really good. So it's not that we're weak little fragile things that are going to break just at the slightest touch.
Yeah.
Although, I think every sensitive person has maybe felt that way at some point in their
Yeah.
life when they're dealing with a difficult circumstance. I know I have.
Yeah.
But it's more that our bodies and minds are responsive.
Yes.
So we argue in our book that maybe responsive would be a better word because that's actually what's going on.
Mhm.
The
More
responsive
accurate
quality.
term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 Well, the way I think of that, Jen, too, is that we're fully engaged in life. Like
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
very present, so we respond intensely to
Yes.
what's going on and around us and within us.
Yeah, yeah. And in our book, we talk about something called the sensitive boost effect. And this
Yes, I
is the
wanted to ask
fact
you
that,
about.
yeah, yeah, sensitive people get more of a boost from support. So,
Yeah.
there was some research that found that sensitive people, if they had an intervention in their marriage, like some sort of therapy or couples counseling, they were more likely to go on to be able to save their marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's research that's found that teenagers who were given a support program for depression, the sensitive ones were able to go on and use that support to mostly cope with or overcome their depression
Yeah.
symptoms. So
Yeah.
we get that we respond more. We
Yeah.
respond more to trauma, unfortunately, but we also
Yes. Yes.
respond more to support as well.
Well, and we respond to trauma more, but I also believe as a therapist, 25 plus years, that we recover from trauma
Yes.
beautifully,
Yes.
and that we are the people that fall into the post-traumatic growth category.
Yes. I
Yeah,
love that.
because
I
we
love that
need to
phrase.
well, we need to find meaning, right?
Yes.
We're all about
Absolutely.
meaning, depth, and meaning. So we need to find the meaning for the trauma.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So we talked a little about this, but I want you to flesh it out more. A question that I often get is, how do I know if I'm an introvert or a highly sensitive person? Is there a difference, and what is your take on it?
I just wrote a blog post about this, so I'm glad you asked me.
Yeah,
So, like I said, there is a lot of overlap between these two characteristics, and a lot of sensitive people are also introverts. So you can be both. Just like
70% of us, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
like you can be tall and left-handed, you can also be an introvert and a sensitive person.
yeah.
So I would say the difference is that introversion describes a social orientation, whereas
Mm,
sensitivity describes an orientation to your environment. So if
right.
you're an introvert versus an extrovert, right, you prefer small groups of people, you crave solitude,
Mhm.
and you maybe just really cringe when you have to do some sort of small talk.
Or public
Where
speaking, maybe.
public speaking, yeah,
Ah,
exactly. Yep. Whereas if you're a sensitive person, it's more about how you're responding to your environment.
right.
Maybe you're taking in information from your five senses about the activity level in the room, the noise level, the brightness or
Yeah,
lightness or brightness or darkness of the
yeah,
lights.
yeah,
Maybe the way something feels, the
yeah.
hard back of a chair that you're sitting on, or your clothing touching your body, whether it's
Yes,
tight or scratchy or something like that. But that's
yes.
not the only characteristic of sensitive people. We process all stimulation deeply. So we process our own emotions and thoughts and experiences deeply as well. And I would say the difference between an introvert and a sensitive person on one level is that introverts don't have that visceral reaction to
Yes,
stimulation like a sensitive
yeah,
person would. Sure, they
yeah,
might prefer a calm environment, but they're not going to have that strong reaction like a sensitive person might. Also,
yeah,
sensitive people need downtime to recharge their energy and
yeah.
just calm their senses and process their thoughts and feelings. But sensitive people don't necessarily crave solitude in the way that an introvert would.
Yeah, yeah. I have a very good friend who's a extroverted HSP, and she doesn't need so much solitude like I do. Yeah, yeah,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So if you're an extroverted sensitive person, that's going to look a little bit different.
yeah. No, that's wonderful because that's something that people ask all the time. I tried to tackle that one as well in a blog post and video, and but the way you put it was so succinct and fleshed it out a lot more. As you're talking, I'm thinking all of the above, for me today
Right,
even.
right. Yeah, that's me
Um,
too.
yeah, yeah. So we as HSPs often get criticized for our temperament, but I feel it's important to focus on our strengths. My whole career is built around trying to empower HSPs to own their power. I honestly believe, Jen, that at the end of the day, the future of the planet is in our hands as HSPs.
I
Like,
believe that too.
do you?
I completely and fully believe that too.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we're so needed, and we need to rise up. I feel like there's this movement happening, and your book is part of that. That we need to come forth and use our voices, even though it's
Yes.
really uncomfortable.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yes.
yes, the world.
100% yes.
Yes. So what are the strengths of sensitive people outlined in your book? Because you do a beautiful job in talking about them.
There are a lot of strengths of sensitive people. One of the ones I like to talk about is how sensitivity is often linked to brilliance. So,
Yes.
someone who is brilliant is someone who is exceptional in their
Yeah.
field or just really good at what they do, right? No matter
Yeah.
what that is, whether it's art or science or just being a good communicator.
Hmm.
So I interviewed Dr. Linda Silverman of the Gifted Development Center, and she described
Mm.
her research to me, which found that people with the highest IQs often meet the characteristics of sensitive people.
Yeah, I'm not
And
surprised. Yeah.
right. So I just found that fascinating because, it makes sense. The sensitive person's mind processes everything deeply. A lot of times we focus on that sensory discomfort, like lights being too bright or noise being too
Yeah.
loud. But the sensitive mind processes experiences deeply. It processes
Yeah.
ideas deeply, right? If you're reading
Yeah.
a book or studying a new concept as a sensitive person, you're going to keep
Yeah.
chewing on that even
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
maybe other
It
people
goes
have set
deep.
it aside. Yeah, it goes deep. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, sensitivity is linked to brilliance because our minds are taking in so much information and
Mm.
reflecting on it so thoroughly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. Yeah, I don't think I've met an HSP who's not brilliant in some area of their
Right,
life.
right. And that's not to say that we're all like geniuses or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
like there right. I do believe that each sensitive person has some area of brilliance in their lives.
Absolutely. And I noticed too, even in parenting, I think HSP parents, amazing, because they're
Yes.
so attuned to their children. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not, you have a little, how old
I
is your
do.
son?
I do. I was just remembering some of our bedtime struggles last night.
Oh, yeah.
I have a little
Yeah.
2-year-old.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I try to be attuned to him.
Oh, that's a tough age.
Yep, it is.
Yes. Yeah. So you talk a lot about language in your book. Um, oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think it's really important that we talk about language, especially in this day and age. We're getting more attuned to being careful with language. So how we talk about sensitivity influences how we and those around us perceive it. You talk a lot in the book about being mindful of the language we use around sensitivity. So what language should we use and not use when talking about sensitivity and sensitive people?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it starts with reframing sensitivity as being responsive to your environment. But I also think we need to retire the phrase "you're so sensitive."
Yes, that one's useless. I think
Yes,
that's
it's completely useless.
unhelpful.
Throw it away. Yes.
Unhelpful. Yeah,
Yes.
trash can. Yes.
Yeah. There isn't a right or wrong level of sensitivity. You can't
Yeah.
have a right or wrong level of being tall, right?
Right, right.
Um, sensitive people are just as sensitive as they should be.
Right.
So and also that phrase often gets used to gaslight, right?
Yeah,
Like a lot of
diminish.
times, yeah, exactly. If somebody says something mean or hurtful and then turns around and says, "Well, you're just being too sensitive about it." That means
Yeah.
that they don't have to take responsibility for the words they said or the thing that they did.
The one I get, Jen, I got all my life was awkward. That one we should track
Oh,
too. You're
yeah, I
awkward.
agree. I
That's a
agree.
terrible
Yeah.
word.
Just stop judging people in general. How about
Yeah.
that? Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah. Beautiful. So what language should is a responsive? We should talk about being responsive. And I
Yeah,
think,
and I think it's
yeah,
important too for sensitive people to be able to own their sensitivity and to feel
yeah,
comfortable talking about being a
yeah,
highly sensitive person or a highly responsive person,
yeah,
however you want to say it. I
yeah,
think we need to feel comfortable about who we are, and when we ourselves are not comfortable with who we are, that's going to affect how other people see us.
yeah,
But if we
yeah,
can feel good about who we are
yeah,
and show that confidence,
yeah,
then, other people will come to respect and hopefully appreciate our sensitivity too.
yeah. So much of my life was mired in shame and
Yeah, mine too.
self-judgment. Yeah,
Mine too.
about being the way I was, thinking I was defective,
Yeah.
something wrong with me. And since I've started owning it since my 40s,
Mhm.
um,
Good
beyond
time
that
to start
now,
owning things, I've learned.
it's
Mhm.
very good time. And wait till you get to your 50s. Wow, biology really takes care of a lot of
Crazy.
this. Yeah,
Can't wait.
yeah, you get bolder and you don't care so much what other people think. It's fantastic.
That's good.
And yeah, I think there's a movement amongst us. I'd like to see it in the 20 somethings because I work a lot with those folks and they're still kind of teetering on, a lot of self-deprecation and
It can be a
um,
hard time.
oh, it's a tough time. I was talking to you before we got on this interview about how your book, there's a whole chapter on overstimulation. And I was just coming back from 6 weeks in Costa Rica and we missed a flight due to weather. We got stuck in LA and in Vancouver and I was trying to work from a hotel room
Oh,
and
geez.
my whole routine got up. So my work was blown to bits. So was my husband's. And then we had to stay overnight in Vancouver and take a float plane home. Anyways,
Oh, wow.
everything. Yeah. I mean, first world problems, but still, it was for two HSPs that was very discombobulating
Traveling can be really
and
overstimulating, just
yeah,
the process of
overstimulating.
traveling. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Eating horrible food and yeah, sleeping on different beds. So
Right.
just all those things, yeah, compounded. And then I kind of hit the wall last Sunday. Um, and I just felt like I just got really, really anxious and was having, racing thoughts and, sort of just, I was trying to do so much and I was just
Mhm.
felt like I was way ahead of myself. I was moving forward, but I was tilted forward. I wasn't balanced. So I read your chapter Sunday night on overstimulation. And it just gave me everything I needed, all the tools that I needed. And that was just, first of all, it just validated what was happening for me, that my senses were overloaded,
Mhm.
that I was exposed to too much noise, too much change, too much, yeah, just not having, control over my environment,
Yeah.
not enough time alone. I was stuck with all these people, airports and everything. And I just decided, I said, I'm just going to hibernate tonight for,
Nice.
and be quiet. And I told my husband, I don't want to talk. I just want to read. I
Nice.
wasn't on devices. And all it took, Jen, was that one night. And I read that chapter. I felt totally justified and calm in taking that time for myself, used the tools in that chapter. And I was pretty much good by Monday morning. It was
That's
amazing.
great. I'm so glad to hear
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
great. And
So
so
can
nice
you
that you can say that to your husband and it sounds like
oh,
he
yeah.
understands.
Oh, he totally gets it. Yeah, and he was overwhelmed as well. So, do you want to just talk about that chapter? It was so beautiful. Just
Sure.
about, yeah, overstimulation and what people can do when they're overstimulated, when an HSP gets overstimulated. What can they
Yeah.
do? I find it takes 24 to 48 hours for me to recalibrate my
Mhm.
nervous system.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think for me, it depends on how overstimulated I am. I try to
Mhm.
catch that overstimulation before it really adds up. And I found that
Yeah,
if I can, and obviously in some circumstances, you can't help it. If you're traveling and, in
yeah,
and out of airports, there's nothing you can do about that. But when I'm able to catch it and say, okay, I'm about to go over the edge, right? I need to do something to calm
How
myself
how do
down
you
and
know
go
how do
ahead.
you know when you're reaching that edge for yourself?
I start to get irritated with
Yeah,
things around me. Can feel like I am just having trouble thinking and making decisions.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll even feel like I, just can't communicate, like it's a burden to even communicate one more thing to someone else in my life.
yeah, yeah,
When I'm not sleeping well, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep because I'll be thinking about certain situations. I feel sort of ramped up. I know that that is, I am approaching that overstimulation. There's just too much going on.
yeah.
Or if you feel like you need to close your eyes, or if you have like the
Mm.
urge to cover your ears, or just the urge
Yeah.
to go somewhere quieter and calmer, anytime I feel that urge to withdraw,
Yeah.
that can
Yeah.
be a big sign.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you advocate people doing to manage the overstimulation and come back to center? Recalibrate
Yeah.
them.
I think there's things you can do in the moment, and then there's things you can do over the long term to build that lifestyle that works for you as a sensitive person.
Mhm.
And in the moment, first, it's just being mindful of what's going on.
Yeah.
It might help to do a body scan, which is just to
Mm.
mentally assess where you're at and think about, am I feeling any tightness in my chest, or am I feeling any aches in my body, or any discomfort or pain? I
Mhm.
think it helps to try to be mindful of your thoughts and emotions, because those will tell you in the moment if you're starting to get overstimulated. And then, of
Mhm.
course, in the moment, if you're feeling overstimulated, do something to try to take a break, whether it's just going on a short walk or just saying, I need 5 minutes to close the door and be alone.
Mhm.
Whatever you need to do, you need to take that break. And
Yeah.
then I think over the long haul, it's about building that lifestyle that works for you as a sensitive person. So for me, teaching
Yeah.
was meaningful. It was a meaningful career, but it was very overstimulating for me. I
Yeah.
was exhausted at the end of every day. Now
Yeah.
I get to work from home, and I work in
Mhm.
this quiet office, right, that
Yeah.
I control. And I get to
Oh,
control my own hours. I
yeah.
can control the lights and the noise. There's
Don't
so
you
much.
think that I work from home as well? And it's I just can't imagine doing anything. Like I really
No,
think for HSPs, this is kind of our happy place because I can
I think
control
so. Yeah.
the sound, the smells, the light, the
Yeah.
air, what I'm wearing. I can change
Yes.
during the day if I need to. I can make my food. I can sort of nest. I can meditate here. Yeah, I don't have
Absolutely.
to interrupt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it's looking at your life and thinking about what's going to work for you as a sensitive person, and then making changes. It might mean setting better boundaries. I think a lot of sensitive people struggle with setting healthy boundaries. I mean, I know I do, and it's still an ongoing thing for me.
Yeah.
But we
That
need to look at maybe where our energy is going and set some firmer boundaries in some places.
I just sorry to interrupt, but that was
No, that's
a
okay.
key point came to mind. So last night I was sitting reading your book, and another part jumped out at me that was absolutely brilliant. And you talked about the difference between empathy and self-compassion. And well, empathy and compassion. And you're basically saying that when we're feeling empathy, we can deplete our resources and our energy because um, we're just sort of giving, giving, giving and not receiving anything back. But compassion is a whole different thing because we're not putting out our own energy. We're just sort of sending the energy out to other people, but keeping some for ourselves. So maybe you can word that in a different way.
Sure. No, I think you
In
did a
terms
great
of
job.
boundaries, because that's a
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
problem we have as a HSP,
Yeah,
is we
absolutely.
just want to give and give and give, and we can't, like we burn out.
We can't, we burn out, and there are people who will take advantage of our
Yes.
generosity. I have lived through that myself.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
empathy can be a painful emotion, because empathy says, I'm feeling what you're feeling. If you're stressed, I'm stressed. If you're sad, I'm sad. And that can become overwhelming for sensitive people, for anyone, but for especially for sensitive people. But yeah, what we encourage people to do is to move from empathy to compassion. You don't have to feel those difficult emotions within yourself to be able to support and help someone. In
Yeah.
fact, a lot of times when we're feeling those negative emotions in ourself, it makes us want to withdraw rather than
Yeah.
go help and support the person who
Yeah.
needs that help and support, because we're then
Right.
that we're putting the focus on ourselves when
Let's
we're
use a
using
concrete,
empathy.
why
Sure,
don't we use
yeah.
a concrete example? So say you have a friend who's very ill and you want to help, but yeah, how do you switch from empathy to compassion and what can you do?
Yeah, so it's just a mindset shift. It's thinking about, it's putting the focus on the other person instead of putting the focus on your own feelings for that person.
Uh-huh.
Empathy is also an active feeling. It wants to
Yeah.
help and support in practical ways. So maybe you are seeing how you can support your ill friend,
Yeah.
bringing a meal or checking on their dog or something like
Yeah.
that. It says, I'm going to show up for you, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to drag myself down in the process.
Right, right. So how, if you're working from empathy, how could you drag yourself down in that process versus acting from compassion?
Yeah, I think when we work from empathy, the focus is on feeling the emotions with the other person. And that's important too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we all want someone who empathizes with us and feels with us. And sometimes that's all it takes is
Yeah.
we feel better when we know that someone else understands and empathizes. But I
Yeah.
think if that's your only feeling, you can get pretty bogged down pretty quickly as a sensitive person.
Right, right, right. So how would it look if you're extending compassion to that person? Would you still be bringing them food or checking on their dog or?
Yeah. I think you could take all those practical steps to help them. But I think compassion says, okay, I can help and support this person without having to take on their emotions, without having to take
Yes.
on their stress and sadness within my body, feeling it
Yeah.
myself.
Yes, yes. And that's where you talk about a mindfulness practice of loving
Yes.
kindness.
Yes.
And I find that is incredibly helpful in order to sort of distance ourselves in the way that we need to in order to still show up for that person, but to not take it on as our. I like to add the spiritual concept too of sort of karma or, a bigger picture that I'm not, it's not my job to police the universe and to
Right,
decide
right,
what happens to people and how and when. Like, I don't know why people get sick, and that's not my doing, you
right.
know, and that is having some meaning in that person's life. And it's not my, it's kind of uh, an egotistical thing to think that I can control that or play a hand
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're focused on our own feelings about someone else's suffering, it is kind of egotistical in a way because
Yeah.
it's putting the focus on ourselves instead of on the person
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
needs the focus to be on, who needs the
Yeah.
help or
Yeah.
support.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also just asking that person, what do you need?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Not
because I
here's what
think
I'm going to do. Yeah.
right. Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we sensitive and empathetic people can think like, oh, we know exactly what someone else needs, but I think there is a time when you need to check in and ask them directly for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So through your two online communities, introvertdear.com and highly sensitiverefuge.com, you've interacted with probably thousands and maybe even millions of introverts and HSPs. So I'm dying to know what a bullet list is of some of the most valuable advice and wisdom that you've heard from these folks about how to thrive both as an introvert and an HSP or both.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest point I've heard from other people is that just having the knowledge of sensitivity and introversion and being able to say, yes, I'm an introvert or yes, I'm a sensitive person. That knowledge, that word, that's really key for people. It really helps people to know that
Mhm.
things I'm struggling with, I'm not
Yeah.
alone in those things. There are lots of other people out in the world who are
Yes.
experiencing similar things as me. And then being able to, once you have that language to talk about your personality or your struggles or your strengths, I think then you can take a look at your life and say, well, maybe are there little changes I can make to
Mhm.
bring my own life into a better alignment with who I am as an introvert or a sensitive person?
Right.
I think once we can start owning our sensitivity
I
and
was just
start seeing
thinking
it
that
as a
word,
strength.
owning.
Yeah. Yep,
Owning our
exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that then we can get on that path to bringing our life into a better alignment. Maybe that's setting boundaries. Maybe that's speaking up for what you need. Maybe it's just first recognizing what you need, because I think as sensitive people, especially, we end up focusing on other people's needs because of our empathy. A
Yeah.
lot of times we forget to focus on our own needs and ask ourselves, what do I need or want in this situation?
Yes.
But
Yes.
I think that knowledge is the first step.
Yeah. That's lovely. Um, so I want to end with an experiential exercise, Jen. So could you imagine yourself as a wise elder looking back on the younger versions of yourself? What would you say to that child, adolescent, and young woman now about your introversion and sensitivity if you could go back in time? What would you say to yourself that you didn't hear back then that would have really helped you?
I would tell her that she is valuable just as she is. I would tell her that she's stronger than she thinks. And I would ask her to start seeing her sensitivity and her introversion as a strength. And knowing myself, she probably wouldn't hear those things right away,
Yeah, yeah.
or really be able to take them in and internalize them. But I would tell her that one day she would be able to see those things as strengths and not deficiencies.
Well, I definitely think you're doing that now. I think if anybody knows what you're doing in your work, that you've definitely nailed that.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
good with compliments, but thank you.
oh yeah, yeah, same, same. Um,
Maybe that's something I'll work on when in my 50s. Taking
we
compliments better.
we need to, okay, so the thing, this may help you and other people listening. Um, the thing is, when someone gives you a compliment, it's like a gift they're offering you. And if you push it away, you're saying, I don't want that gift.
Oh, that's so good. That's
Yeah.
really good. Thank
So
you.
maybe it would help us as HSPs to think, well,
Yeah,
I don't want someone to suffer and think that I don't want their gift. Um,
I
you
love
know,
that.
yeah. So is
I'm
there
gonna
any,
think of that when I'm getting compliments now. I'm gonna hear your voice saying that it's another
okay,
person giving me a gift.
that's awesome. Did I miss anything, Jen? Was there anything else you wanted to say about the book, your projects?
No, I don't think so. The book is out now. You can find it at any major bookstore or online. Um, yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram under my name, Jenn Granneman. You can find Introvert Dear on all the social media channels too, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
that in the show
You
notes.
can find me everywhere.
Yeah. And yeah, I just again want to thank you and Andre for writing this beautiful book. I feel like we needed, yeah, a new PR. Take it needed a facelift. The
Yeah,
PR.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that's what my book will help accomplish.
It's down to earth, it's easy to understand, it's accessible, it's fascinating, it's got really cool anecdotes and research, and yeah, like little things like Andre's sister is a
Uh-huh.
Buddhist
Hmm.
monk.
Yeah,
uh that's so cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I
He's a
mean,
really
there's,
cool person.
yeah, there's so many things that are contained within this book. Isn't it's not an academic. I mean, you cover the science and the studies and it's all of that beautifully, but it's not an academic treatise on high
Right.
sensitivity. I think
Yes,
it people will understand the language,
I
which
hope so.
anybody can pick up this book and resonate with it. I'm telling everybody to get it. So thank you again for writing it and for being, yeah, just for using your voice. I think you and Andre are an example of people who have moved past their fear of being in the spotlight and, yeah, getting out there and spreading a very important message to the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will envision you giving me a gift with that compliment and say thank you.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.